Hello, everybody. We're recording episode 9. Today we have David Bamber. He is a jiu-jitsu brown belt at Supremacy in Largo, Florida here. He does roll like a black belt, so the brown belt doesn't really fit. So you should
Thanks.
probably paint it at some point. Um, we're going to talk about a bunch of things, and I think I want to start with marketing because you've been a marketer pretty much all your life, as far as I know. And you've done all kinds of marketing, both sort of online Google PPC. I see you're posting content, and now you're doing marketing for a business you got into. And so
Yep.
let's see if we can pick that apart. You want to do a quick intro?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So, I'd preface with like, it's always so weird to talk about yourself, right? A little bit. So it was like the highlights. But
Yep.
I guess I could say I started in marketing or really kind of got baptized in marketing in 2010 when I joined at MLM. But I prefaced my professional career with like the first 10 years, like, 18 to 28 for sure. I didn't really do much. Like
Hmm.
I love martial arts. I started jiu-jitsu. I thought I was going to be a career military guy. Like that's what I thought my plan was. Got into bartending, and then like the years just kind of slipped by. I always thought I'd get back in the military, and I never did. And then I knew I wanted more, and then I started to listen to and read some of those books that are popular. Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, and You Think and Grow Rich. And I started to get introduced to that. Tony Robbins, Anthony Robbins, of course, and then Jim Rohn it was Tony Robbins' mentor, and I really loved the
Hmm.
stuff that he said because it was super simple. Then I kind of that's when I joined a multi-level marketing company called Visalis, and they tried to throw a lot more of free marketing content at you and tried to teach you certain ways, and this was, I would say, right before MLMs really started to get a shitty name. Because now
Yeah.
you say multi-level marketing company or MLM, and it's like, oh, scam, 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 right? And a lot of them can be, right? And I mean, I can go down a rabbit hole of arguing both sides for that. But 2010 is when I really kind of started getting into it. And then I uh, I interned for what I consider my first mentor, and then he finally gave me a job, and then I ended up partnering with him, and that was in kids martial arts and after school summer camps.
Hmm.
And he really showed me the ropes. Like he was the guy that like gave me that first shot, right? Like if you're thinking of a movie storybook, like he was the guy that gave me my first shot. And so I'll always have a debt owed to him for sure. And so let's see, I've done a lot. Let's see. So I partnered with him to open up summer camps and after schools. We That partnership dissolved, and then I started my own business a couple months later. Similar thing. He kind of showed me the ropes on how to do it, and so I created a martial art enrichment where I taught stand-up martial arts and then jiu-jitsu. I was a blue belt in jiu-jitsu at the time. And this was 2014 when I started this, my first business on my own. No startup money. This is all just sweat. I grew that to just shy of 30 schools in the Hillsborough and Pinellas County area. So, it was doing a couple 100,000. So not bad for, first starting off. Fast forward, my dad passed away. I got a partner, and I probably shouldn't have. I didn't know how to mentor, a partner. My head was all messy at the time, and I was really
Mm-hmm.
just hoping he would take over and just not include me in a lot of things, and because I was starting to get itches into doing other things as entrepreneur, the shiny object syndrome that we all suffer from. And then
Yeah.
I met my partner where we really saw a lot of success, Chris Rodriguez, in 2016. And so she brought me on to help run her school, to be her head coach for the school. And then we got into the digital space when it comes to coaching, consulting, and online courses. So our Blue Ocean strategy was kids programming. So her and I, at least in our little neck of the woods in Tampa, we're pretty known for kids jiu-jitsu teaching. And so her and I really
Mm-hmm.
connected and aligned on that. And so we're like, okay, here's our Blue Ocean strategy. We're going to come up with this badass, kick-ass course. We're going to teach coaches, jiu-jitsu coaches specifically, how to teach kids classes, programming,
Hmm.
A to Z. And we knew that jiu-jitsu coaches will always say, I'm the best adult teacher you'll ever find. but we also knew that they would admit that they weren't good at kids classes, right? Take our professor, Rodrigo, just not his cup of tea, kids classes. And it really takes a special kind of person to enjoy kids classes, because you really have to enjoy it if you want to be good at it, and if you want to take it a really long way. And so that took off really well. So that was like a one big course, and we just wanted to kind of test the waters, and that got us a lot of kind of claim to fame, in the jiu-jitsu community. And the karate and taekwondo guys, they've already had this stuff for a long time, right? And so jiu-jitsu, there was really no one in that space. There's no real big like influencer that was teaching people. It's still such a new martial art that people are still very cagey about, this is my brand, this is my style. Our professor as well, like, I know the best, better in this, etc. And then I see a natural progression in martial arts, as it go, like you understand that people move and they transition, and you're not so kind of cagey around your style of martial art. And so anyways, there was
Hmm.
no one in that space. And then once people wanted more, we're like, oh, I think we need to rebrand. And so we created a full, online learning platform, and group coaching and one-on-one consulting. And that we went from Kids Jiu-Jitsu Academy, we rebranded to Jiu-Jitsu University, and then we rebranded finally to Martial Art Entrepreneurs, because we eventually wanted to open it up
Hmm.
to everyone. That's when we started to compete with the bigger people. The karate guys have had their coaching, consulting, and their online programs for decades, right? And then that kind of we sold that, fizzled that partnership out. We're still good friends. We all have a healthy relationship. And then I had a tumultuous, tough partnership with a software company, and that didn't end but well. And I can get into that if you want. And then that led me, fast forward, I was picked by these two amazing entrepreneurs to be their managing partner of what I run now, the contractor headquarters marketing agency, where we specialize in helping contractors doing under 4 million gross sales, marketing,
Hmm.
business development, all of those things. And so, anyways, through that whole business, all of those things is all marketing, is all sales. As you know, as an entrepreneur, building a business, you have to wear so many hats, right? And so, I just kind of fell in love with marketing. I do really enjoy sales. I love when I am in love with something so much that I can just naturally talk about it. And through that, you influence people, and some people consider that sales or salesy, and I don't. I just think, you're just in love with something. But, anyways, all of that was marketing and entrepreneurship. And that's the quick and dirty version of, where I am now.
Yeah, no, that's great. I've always been on the product side, and so to me, marketing was
Mm,
always two things really. The product itself, because a lot of people kind of took the product as the product itself, and then they took marketing as a separate entity. And to me,
mm,
marketing was always built into the product. That was like
yes.
the packaging of it, of the unboxing experience, the
Yeah.
experience with the product. The product ultimately had to be built in the way that made people talk about it.
Yes.
So I always focus kind of on quality and the user experience of the product itself,
Yeah.
that had marketing built into it. And on the other side of the marketing was always operations and customer service, because
Sure.
I always say everybody in your organization is in marketing. It's like the guy that drives the truck for the company is in marketing.
Right.
So you got to make sure that he's not cutting people off and running
Right.
old ladies off the left lane. The guy in the warehouse that works with the truckers that are picking up the goods, he's in marketing. You want to make sure that they understand that they're not removed from that marketing experience. And then
Yes.
salespeople are obviously in marketing because the way they speak and
Yeah.
the language they use and the relationships they build, they're in marketing. So marketing was more of just kind of a natural thing. And all of the marketing in my personal experience has always been really like SEO and PPC. And then at some
Sure.
point we got into like Instagram ads, but all that stuff was more just shameless self promotion of posting pretty pictures of the products.
Right.
And
Right.
so I
Yeah.
think in a traditional sense, I'm kind of different. I'm using a different lens to look at marketing. But
Yes.
you were always on the service side of the
I
marketing
was.
side,
I
because
was.
you didn't really have any physical product. And so I'm curious to think about, or how you think
Mm.
about marketing relative to the service when you don't have the product that kind of integrates into the marketing plan?
Great question. So the way to think about it is the service is the product, right? And so if you think of the product, I'm thinking of a toy in my head right now for whatever reason.
Right.
But you think of the service as that, right? Okay, what does it look like? And so one of the things we were great at is we built out this really great customer journey map. And what that did was, from the moment you started doing marketing, right, developing your product, that top of funnel all the way through, keeping them lifelong, right? That's all marketing. That's all that customer journey. And so to me, that as a service, right? I'm hoping this is the best frame to put that lens on. From that whole customer journey, that's the whole product, right? So, fitness is an easy one for people to remember. So that whole product, what is that, right? And you just mentioned a couple of things. You hit it right on the head. You know, how is you yourself or your team member showing up? What are they wearing? What's the scripts that they memorize? What's their level of expertise? Are they getting consistent knowledge? Are they constantly updating their skill sets? Do they feel part of the team? What is, if it's a service where people come to you, what does that environment look like, right? So that service is to me 10x the experience of a product, right? Where you don't really
Hmm.
know where they're going to unbox it, right? You get feedback and you have tests and you do all these things from a product standpoint. Service, you can tweak it a lot more, right? Because you get to see in real time how people is experiencing that. You don't get to see when they open it up. Right now, people on YouTube, they do, box openings and they do things like that. So, but that to me, that whole experience is the product. And so that's the thing that you need to tweak. And you nailed it. And right now I'm really high on Alex Hormozy. I know you know who he is. And he says that if your product is just so good that you shouldn't be done any marketing, right? People are going to naturally talk about it. He proves it, right, with his book and his free courses that he gave a year ago. And I mean, he just proves it right there. Apple's another great example for whoever's listening. Apple didn't advertise forever. What did Steve Jobs and then what did people that took over after him really care about? It's funny. I said that literally today on TikTok. I saw an Apple ad. So they are doing ads, right? But for the longest time, they didn't have to because they just focused on the product, right? They just focused on themselves. They didn't focus on their competitor. They just knew ways to tweak it. And so I don't know the insights that you have from like when you look at a product, but to me, from a service side, all of those things need to be tweaked. And service to me is a lot more heavy, and correct me too, or I'd love to have this conversation. It's a lot more people focused, right? So if it's a service, it's a person to person thing typically. So you have
Right.
the advantage and the challenge of being able to help tweak people. And so I mean, you can get really deep into personal development depending on, what the motivators are with yourself and your team based on the service. Martial arts is an easy one that you and I both kind of understand. Um, so man, I mean, I can give you an example. We had 50 courses and we shot over 800, film or 800 videos of teaching people. And then we had group coaching and then we had consulting. So all of that was to help, improve that product. And so, and from that standpoint, I'm trying to relate it into your kind of side of the industry. All of those different tweaks are the marketing, like you're alluding to, right? Making these adjustments, marketing. That person that's driving that van, make sure they're not, running ladies off the road. Like that is part of your marketing. And also, marketing is just a wedge of the total pie, right? And so marketing fits in
Hmm.
that total pie because if you have your core values locked in, if you have your whys, your reason, all that fluffy stuff that some people think is fluffy when it comes to building companies that you worry about way later, right? That can matter, right? That matters, especially if if you really, really care about developing the product. And I know you have a really great mind for that. So if you know how to develop the product, either like I was saying, the snapshot from a service standpoint, or actually building a physical product that you use and operate, um, I think every part of that is marketing. So I don't want to go too much deeper, but hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. and
Yeah,
and I think that in whether it's a service, especially in the service industry, I would say you kind of have to package it, right? Because
yeah,
if you tell people that you do all these things, people have a hard time with the abstract. You ultimately have to take all that abstraction and make something concrete out of it. And so you're ultimately taking a
yeah,
product and packaging, or taking a service and packaging it as a product
right.
that's sellable, that has a price tag. that has something that you can actually like make a video out of, and or even
Yeah.
advertisement out of, and then post it, and people be like, oh, I need that, rather than I'm Dave
Yeah.
that does consulting, and you're like, do I don't need
Right.
no, like nobody needs consulting, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Right. Well, the psychology too behind, in my world, niching down is just all the rage. And so instead of being, one
Mhm.
for everyone, you want to be really niche down. And that just doesn't mean when you're advertising, focus on one type of service or product, but that niches down into psychology. So, if you're running ads or if you have a really strong, organic content game when it comes to marketing, niche down, talk specifically to one need, but make sure you solve the problem. You know what I mean? And the big thing right now in marketing is like, was it sell the solution, but like give them the solution, but what you're selling is the implementation, right? The hardest thing in the world, which is why,
Mhm.
self-development, personal development, books and conventions and influencers will always exist is because the implementation, as you know, is the hardest freaking part. Um, and so
Correct.
Right. And so that's the big thing. And so when you're creating the content, whether it's a paid ad strategy, or it's organic content, whatever medium you're using for that channel, direct mail, whatever it is, flyers, make sure you're pinning down a specific psychology, right? To give you an easy example, if you're doing meta ads, create each type of ad for like a specific problem. And you're like, yeah, but that'll only speak to like
Mhm.
one side of my audience. Yes, but it'll resonate so much more because what you want is you want raving fans of you, especially, I mean, depends on this varies depending on the size and scale of your business, of course. But you want to really niche down the psychology and really address a specific problem. And that's the tough part. Like that's to me, good marketers, good agencies, that's the tough part is figuring out, how to actually speak. Anyone can create content with a Canva account. You know what I mean? Anyone can, get on their phone, do a live, but what are you actually, I value people's time so much. I canceled yesterday with you. What did I tell you? I meant to do this last night, and I was like, I respect your accomplishments and who you are so much. I want to be as sharp as I possibly can. And so I had to reschedule with you, right? So I value people's time and attention so much, and that's like a deep core thing. And so if I'm creating some marketing, I want to try to do my best to solve that thing for you, to address it, to show that like I'm actually spending the time to understand you, and to me, that's where it's winning. And one of the things I'm seeing a big comeback is organic content. Right now, I can argue with the best of
Mhm.
them on, how much reach is that going to get on each platform, right? YouTube Shorts and TikTok is probably the two you're going to get the most reach on, organic reach. But I see a big push on people creating organic content. Now, why? Now, why is that? Two factors. One, the TikTokification and the short form video is like on fire, and it has been for the last couple of years. And
Yeah.
TikTok gave such a crazy unfair advantage to zero following accounts. You could blow up and go viral. TikTok's algorithm was fantastic. And so now all these big platforms, including Meta, are starting to put more emphasis on organic content. And then the number two reason, not just the TikTokification short form video, but is appealing to actually like humans. It's not, why did vlogging
Mhm.
get so big 7, 8, 9 years ago? Vlogging got big because you got a camera and you get to behind the scenes of people's lives, all the failures and the blemishes. Well, it's the same thing with the organic content, right? Is you want to be raw but not sloppy. So you want to be raw but show your expertise, and that'll just come through naturally. And here's the thing, you don't need to appeal to everybody, right? Like screw everybody. You're trying to just appeal to your niche within your niche. So like if we're in home services, right? HVAC, plumbing, electrical, all that. And so that's it's a 430, $40 billion a year industry, right? It's a big, big industry. And so for my agency to be successful, right, I have to appeal my style of who I am. Like I come to, hey, this is what my knowledge is. This is my energy, all of that. I put that in my organic imagery, my copy, my videos, and I will draw attention to my audience. My audience will come to me that way. And because that's so important and people are resonating that, the algorithm is picking this up. And so that's why I think there's a bigger push
Mhm.
for creating smaller communities is really what you're doing with the organic content. Kind of
Yeah. I
went on a
think
rant
Gary
there.
Vee is actually talking about all those things.
Oh yeah, yeah, he's been saying that
Yeah, yeah,
crap
no, no.
for.
I think Gary Vee is talking about it. Like his last book that I read. He's basically talking about taking everything you do and then kind of creating these cohorts, he's calling it,
Mm, There
that
we
are
go.
very specific groups of people with a very specific problem.
Yeah. 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 And that's, and I think that's, if you're like, okay, well, how do we build or how do we market? How do we build a better product? Like, how do we get more out? The real question is, how do you get more eyeballs on your thing? Um, that's where it's going to go over the next 3, 4 years for sure. I can't really see any further than that, but like, that's going to be the biggest thing is you want to create your small little tribe. Small, I mean, it could be millions of people, but your small tribe. And that's what it's really going to be about because no one in the world has something that has never been seen or done before, right? Like it's not that. You're not going to be that one guy that's figured out the one thing. And if you do, you'll be a billionaire. I mean, that's great, right? Tesla. So if you're able to to be Elon Musk and create, something so revolutionary that you're kind of in a category yourself, great. But for everyone else, it's going to be who you are in here, and the more you show yourself in here, which is the scary part, the more you're going to attract that tribe, right? From a business standpoint or not. And I think that's where marketing, sales, branding is making a big comeback. Branding got a shitty name because what's the ROI of branding, right? It got a really bad name,
Right.
and I think it's coming back, and it's coming back because branding involves the heart, it involves the psychology, it involves the reasoning behind your purchasing power, why people are actually listening and buying, and all those things. So I think branding is making a big comeback.
Yeah, absolutely. And my introduction to marketing was actually, 20 years ago through Seth Godin. He
Oh
wrote
yeah,
a bunch of
Godfather.
books, but I think
Yeah.
yeah. His one of his first books was All Marketers Are Liars, and I read it and I was like, huh, this is brilliant. And then, three or four books later, he created a book called Tribes. And I was like, where the hell is he going with this? Because it's like, it was so removed from all his previous material where he was
Mm,
talking about kind of creating a product that was remarkable, right? And the purple cow and all of that stuff. And then he
right.
got
Purple
into
cow.
tribes. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about is like, you got to create these like cohorts of people and be authentic to them. And then so
Yeah.
you don't have to be all things to all people. You just have to be something very specific to a very specific group that has a specific problem. And
Yeah.
that's basically your way in.
Yeah. Why is this big, massive side hustle culture has grown and grown and grown? It's because of that, And I mean, not mention the economy was crap, and now we have Trump, which thank God. But that economy grew, the side hustle economy grew because people realized, like, hey, the way I, make a purple cow is my own way, and people will like that, right? The way I paint this picture, the way I build this product, provide this service is unique to me. And that's why, and also typically less expensive, right? When you're using a side hustle vendor or something like that. Um, and it comes from that tribe. I didn't know Seth Godin created a book like that. That makes me excited because I've been thinking about tribes for a while, not just from a marketing standpoint. As you know, we've had some discussions about that, but like that's, I think, in a big way where the whole world is going. I actually think we're going to create these communities where we all are going to agree on a certain set of rules, principles, values, and that's how we're going to kind of live. You know what I mean? I can leave my door wide open because I know my community, no one's going to, do anything, right? I really think that's where it's going. Maybe for sure I'm an idealist, but that's definitely where marketing is
Definitely.
going.
Not even a question. Not even a
Yeah,
question.
right.
Um, but yeah, that's ultimately where it's going. See, it's a gift and a curse because on the one hand, it's now easier to kind of niche things and you can carve out a small piece of it and basically grow from that very small niche to a broader audience, which is exactly what
Yeah,
I've done. Like when I started the paper tube company, I didn't start a packaging company. I started a tube company that was very specific to a very
right.
specific group. And then as those people started coming my way, they were asking, "What else do you do?" Because I've basically proven myself to be
Yes,
able to deliver that thing to them that I became kind of like an expert authority on packaging. And then
right,
since we already had the relationship built, I ended up getting a bunch of this other business that had nothing to do with tubes.
right. They wanted to do business with Dave, like they want to do business with you,
Correct.
right?
That's exactly right. And it's interesting because I was at a trade show once and we shared a booth with this guy who sold like plastic jars or your standard kind of lipstick containers. And I'm like, aren't you concerned that like half this trade show is basically selling the same things you are? And he's like, people work with people. And I remember that
Mm,
phrase because
mm,
It's not the product, it's the people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is. And, the frustrating part for me, being in marketing so long and trying to help clients through these processes, is, you got to put yourself out there, or you can have someone high level membership leadership be out there for your brand, right? They got to have that experience, you know what I mean? And I think and especially if you're interested in having the competitive advantage, I think creating organic content, creating short form videos, I really just think um, that's what people need to do. And so it's like, okay, well, I'm shy in front of the camera, or I'm not a good writer. You mentioned you're a great writer, right? So practice, like freaking practice. You know how we got good on camera when we had to film 800 videos and 50 courses, and create. Oh, by the way, it was an
Yeah.
online business. Like we had to create all kinds of content on top of that. We did a monthly live webinars. We did all kinds of videos. I mean, we did a ton. We practiced, but how we get better was we created a Facebook group, and we just went live by ourselves. We filmed videos by ourselves. We just did the
Hmm.
reps. Well, how do you get better at writing? The process of getting better on camera and through writing, but more importantly, putting yourself to people so you can kind of feel that, oh, doesn't feel good to feel good. To me, that's going to help motivate, right? Because even if you practice a ton, when you finally give it to someone, you're like, that could be better. That could be better. That's fine. It's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. Like, but you have to practice what you preach. You have to put yourself out there. And through that process, you're gonna evolve. You're gonna get better. The way your brain thinks, the way you're able to regurgitate information, the way you're able to say, oh, you know what, my face is awful. Maybe that's why I show up on a customer's doorstep and I have this face. Maybe I didn't know that. So I think you need to evolve. And so if you want to put yourself out there and have fantastic, marketing or that competitive advantage, you put yourself out there. But you need to make sure that you have that work ethic. I just filmed I'm about to film today. I just wrote a script. It's a 3-part series, and it's about the mindset, the work ethic, and the resilience that owners need to have. Because I tell you, and now I'm getting a little fired up here, so many times clients, not just in the agency I have now, but just in the last 10 years, they're like, the marketing doesn't work. Oh, the leads don't work. Oh, these are quality crap leads. Yeah, but you yourself, the owner, either you're not good on sales, you're not good on the phone, you're not good, writing your emails. Like maybe the way you're presenting yourself is not professional, or the way it needs to look to resonate to your audience. Like, and that comes from a either mindset blockage or a work ethic, a big work ethic block, and doing those reps. And so it kind of starts there. And so, if if you don't have the work ethic, especially if you're starting up, if you don't have the work ethic to do those hours to improve, you don't have the mindset to say, hey man, I'm a slobby mess. Seek coaching, seek a good friend that can tell you have those hard conversations. Like put yourself out there in the world and have that yucky, embarrassing feeling to hopefully motivate you in good ways to get yourself better. And so those three things, resilience, mindset, and work ethic, you need to have as a evolution of yourself. Because when you do that, you're going to have that work ethic to run those leads. Oh my God, I have 1,000-person contact list. Email those mofos. Seek counsel. Like so many people, they get in their cave and I know my business better than anyone attitude. And the marketing should just
Hmm.
be switch on. And that's not how marketing works. And I don't care what agency is telling you that. That's not how it works, right? And so I'm getting a little fired up. I'm ranting, but
No,
it's
it's
just
all good. It's all good, man.
right. It's just so frustrating because I've had these conversations with so many small business owners, and this one just popped in my head. And when he's doing great in the year, he's seasonal. When he's doing great in the year, like he's
Hmm.
happy, he's crushing it, and I give him the same advice. You got to hire front desk, you got to hire a manager, you have the money, the resources. I don't know what you're doing with what your take home, but I know for a fact what his revenue is, what's he spending. He needs to be hiring these people. And every year he has the chance to do it, right? He has a chance to take from the business, hire and train. Through that process, maybe he'll hire some shitty people. He'll feel get burned. That happens to all of us that hire people.
Hmm.
That's leadership. So now, oh my God, now I have to work on leadership. But people get so in their caves, these small business owners, and I get why, right? I'm not taking away from the fucking struggle of it. Trust me, I know. My first business crashed and burned. It was
Yeah,
awful. It
for
was,
sure.
the worst experience of failing in a business is you're letting your team down, but more importantly, you're letting the customers down that spent their money, their energy, their time on you and your product, your service. I mean, that is a horrible feeling. And so that's why I just get so fired up about the human behind the product and the human behind the service. You need to be, really investing in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very difficult to do that as a small business because you have to wear so many hats,
Sure.
and you have to be, the janitor slash owner. And then you have
Yeah.
to hire and you have to train and you have to delegate. At some point, you kind of have to do it. I always thought of a phrase, um, you never get the second chance to make a first impression. The problem
Yeah.
with that phrase is you don't know when that first impression happens, whether it happens on the lead generation
Right.
side or whether it happens on the first communication side or the website. And so when I was running the business, we basically focused on every single piece of that journey. And so we're
Yes.
like, all right, we're bringing all these leads, but we're closing at a very low rate. Where's the problem happening? Is it happening at sales,
Right.
or is it happening at our email communication, or is it happening at the clarity level of our service presentation on the website? And so
Yes.
ultimately, you have to start looking at like each of those little touch points and figuring out how you can improve them, because it's
Right.
exactly right. It's like marketing could be doing their job, but then
Right.
the sales team can't capitalize on any of it. And you're just burning through cash. And then you're like,
Exactly.
oh shit, our ROI sucks, because we're basically spending thousands of dollars on bringing the leads in, but we're not actually converting them. Are we getting bad leads, or are we just bad at selling them?
Right. Yeah, and that's exactly right. And a lot of small business owners, it feels like they're going a million miles an hour, and they have all these hats, right? Like you mentioned. And so when they think of marketing, they think like, ROI, return on, right? And then they go, okay, well, how much money did I make last month or last week? They group these things together, and if they would talk to a coach, a mentor, someone else, someone to help them with their KPIs or their numbers, you can take a look at one aspect and say, okay, this is the one thing, quarter one, or take a whole half a year, but we identified this is the one area that we can improve upon. Churn rate is the first one that I usually, after taking a look at your pricing, I go, okay, what's your churn? Because if you're trying to look at an area to immediately improve all of the other assets, of or aspects of your business, the churn rate is super important, because if you can just improve that by 1%, so it takes 6 months, right? You don't have a lot of time. You're a small business owner. Just say, okay, what can I do to keep my people longer? What can I do to keep the people buying that product, buying that service, being in front of people, and just keep them in your funnel longer? And if you just improve it by 1%, all of your numbers will go up. And so that's one of the things that we try to do foundationally, at least in my agency. We want one of the things we were trying to be best in the world at is helping contractors set up foundationally best practices, right? One of those is tracking and
Mm,
reporting. And I know tracking and reporting is kind of very technical and over people's heads a lot of times, but it's just super, super important to identify, where the leads are coming from, how much time they're spending on their site, what are they spending? Like, all of those metrics are really important, and you need to know them as a business owner. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to change all of these things that are wrong with your business at once, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs in small to medium size, you feel like you're taking on, you feel like there's all of these problems, and you're like, well, I don't know which one to choose. Prioritization, like teaching yourself how to prioritize and what to prioritize,
correct.
is freaking essential, man. And it's tough, right? But again, you got to get outside your bubble. You got to ask experienced people like yourselves, hey, help me, help me, help me. Help is just, I mean, it's a superpower. If you have the ability to be humble enough to ask for help. Now, don't ask from help that from people that haven't done it before, because you're going to be wasting your time. You probably get burned. You get frustrated. They're going to tell you something that's wrong. So vet the people that you're actually opening yourself up to, but then ask for help, man. Just be vulnerable. Hey, man, I suck at this. Help me, because those guys like yourself that have built real companies, real businesses, like they've been in the dirt. Like they played in the dirt. They had to get out of the dirt. They were the mouse that they were in the milk, and they churn to be able to climb out, right? So they get it. No one's gonna make fun of you for asking for help. So that's my little shout out, I guess. Small business owners.
Yeah, for sure, and absolutely, and I think the formula is kind of the same, and it's exactly what you said before. It's about the implementation, because the magic is in the execution. It's not in the strategy, because it's
Yeah.
like if you look at any small business like that's more or less sub $10 million at this point, um, it's it's operations and it's sales, right? You obviously focus on sales first, because without sales, the whole thing can't function. But
Right.
then once you kind of have sales established, you got to start building all the other touch points and all the other components and establishing KPIs. And those KPIs are fairly simple too. It's like ROI, cash flow, and profit
Yeah.
margin. It's like those
Right.
are the three important ones. And then how do you measure those things? It's like, what's our revenue? What's our cost of goods sold? And
Yeah.
then what's our order numbers? And then like, is it seasonal? Is it not seasonal?
Right.
And you start measuring all those little things just to start with, just to start figuring out kind of where to go from there.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. What would you say?
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I was going to ask you, what would you say to someone that is hovering at that 3 to 4 million mark in a product or service business? Like, what would you say? Like, what's one of the main breakthroughs? Is it just, grinding down on the numbers and just fixing one little KPI each quarter? Is it just doing those rocks? You know what I mean? Using the EOS system, like, you just kind of focus on one of those things and
yep.
improving. Is that really the ticket? Yeah.
Yeah, I think $3 to $4 million companies are probably fairly small still.
Yeah.
And again, I'm coming from kind of a product side. And so I imagine the owner is doing still a lot of the things that they should be delegating. I think
Yes.
one main thing that helped us grow is figuring out what I'm spending my time on that's not worth my time. And then
Yes.
hiring people and putting them in that position so they can take things off my plate so then I can start building on larger things, more strategy, maybe larger account management, maybe the marketing side. And then uh,
Right.
you start creating kind of layers within your company of management that then start managing other people below that so that you're not dealing with 10 or 15 people that are reporting to you. You're dealing with like three, and then they manage the rest of the team. So you got to start delegating kind of more executive responsibilities out and then meeting with them. So, I think I don't remember when we implemented EOS. I think it was closer to maybe $6 or $8 million, not 3 to 4 quite. I
Okay.
think at 3 to 4, we were basically just kind of like head in the
You knew what the
ground and
problem
trying
was.
to capture, larger accounts. It was all kind of sales. I mean, up until probably 5 to 6 million, we were just sales, and then as soon as sales ramped up, we're like, how do we figure out the production? Because now production isn't on time. We're having quality issues. Um, Operations can't keep up. The project management side is suffering, and so we start building the other side. You're ultimately like, one side's always going to be above and the other side is always going to be below.
Yeah.
And if you have to choose between the two, you want the sales to be up and production to be here. But at some point, as you start focusing on production, you're going to create all this capacity, and then sales will have to catch up again. But
Right.
it's ultimately one or the other. It's operations and sales.
Yeah, that reminds me and then I have a question for you. It reminds me of a quick little clip that I watched, and this 8-figure entrepreneur was asking a 9-figure entrepreneur, "Hey, how did you make that jump?" Right, that's a pretty substantial jump. And he goes, "Well, when I was an 8-figure entrepreneur, I had a mentor, and he told me, don't do anything." And he's like, "What? What do you mean don't do anything?" He goes, "Wait for something to break." Because
Hmm.
he was saying, and maybe this was unique to that situation, but I took it as most entrepreneurs, you're trying to look for the new trick, the new thing, and the new software, the new thing to either do it quicker or faster or better, whatever that is. When you already have something that is so well running, yes, there's going to be consistent problems all the time, every day to take care of. That doesn't mean your business isn't successful or running well, right? But his thing was like, well, wait till something really breaks. Like you were saying, you're identifying the specific areas that you're like, okay, the operations need to be better. They can't handle output, whatever that is. And so I just thought that was a cool little way to simplify it, that message is wait for it. Don't do anything. Just your business is running, but when something really breaks, you'll be aware of it. And then that's the main thing that you need to focus on.
Yeah, you ultimately pay attention to what's going on because you always want to be observant of where the problems are happening. And a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to somebody who runs a UX agency, and they're more on the product and digital product side. So they
Right.
kind of help people uh, that are launching a digital product, an app or a website, kind of figure out how to create a better user interface that performs better and stuff. But a lot of that is
Hmm.
applied to business operations. You're basically UXing all aspects of your business to figure out where the issues are. So If the problems are on the lead time side, well, what's the problem? Is it the delivery, or is it the production, or is it the complexity? Maybe we need to scale back how many options we offer to people so that we can
Mm,
focus and really hone in on kind of the core product that keeps 80% of the customers happy, and the other 20 just, fall away until much later, until we can actually spend time and money on figuring out how to build that side. But if
yeah,
80%, it's all 80-20, it's
yeah,
like, how do you find the quickest and simplest and easiest and cheapest way to service 80% of your customers? That's really it.
I like that. The delegate, you mentioned delegating. So I want to kind of dive in on that. So delegating requires what, in your opinion, to do well? And can you talk about that evolution of like, okay, like, I have to delegate these things that I did at 100%, I was the pro at, or really good at, or at least you didn't know anyone better that could do it. But you identified, okay, I need to not do this anymore. Like, can you talk about that process and then like what it took to become better and better at it?
Yeah, it's a hard gig because as the owner, nobody can do it better than you, and it's a
Right,
fact, because you're going to pay
right,
attention to these things, and your life is in the line here, and your finances are in the line here, and your company is on the
yeah,
line, and so
yeah,
you have to be okay with somebody doing it as well as 80%. Again, back to the 80-20 rule,
100%.
is like,
Yeah.
and it's good enough. So it's like, at a certain point, I was doing all the graphic design and creating the die lines for the packaging. And then our first hire was a designer, because like, I can't focus on sales because I'm dealing with all these die lines. And so we hired a designer who took that away from me. And then
Mm,
I'm doing all the sales, and I'm like, man, I got to focus on marketing. So like, we hired a salesperson. And so they took all the sales away from me. And now we're paying commission. So like, you have to be okay with that too, because, if you're doing sales as the owner, you're not paying out commission. But then you
right.
have to have a sales team. You got to pay them to be able to do that. And you have all the salaries, obviously. And then as you're doing marketing, you're like, all right, I'm not doing strategy. I'm not doing anything executive. Like, what's the next year going to look for us? I don't have time to deal with it because I have to deal with posting on Instagram. Let's hire somebody who's doing that now. Um, Somebody's not picking up the calls often enough. So you end up as the owner, like sitting after hours and basically burning yourself out, picking up these calls after hours because nobody's around. And you're like, man, why
Yeah.
don't I just pay somebody to stay later and handle all the customer service? It's like, oh shit, we have a lot of customer service calls. Let me figure out the production side. I think maybe there's a problem with the product or production or lead time. um, and then you're into that thing. And then again, as somebody who's managing a product business, you're kind of an engineer to some degree, because you have to
Right.
build the product line, engineer it for quality, figure out where all the problems are. And then as you start standardizing it and those problems kind of start becoming less of an issue, why don't we get a buyer in? Why don't we get somebody in who's managing all these factory relationships other than myself? And then you
Mm,
start sort of putting yourself higher and higher again. I spoke to a friend a couple of days ago who's running a company. They're doing like corporate gifting and stuff. And he said that, I asked him a question of like, how do I find something that I find purpose in, kind of as my next endeavor after I, sold my business? I need something else to do. Like, how do I find something with purpose? And he basically said, and I don't know if I agree with it yet, but he said that as an entrepreneur, the purpose is in the building, not the product. You can ultimately substitute the product, but at a certain point, you're going to be so far removed from the product that you have to be the person who finds interest and meaning in the building of the business rather than the product side, because you're going to be the CEO at some point, right? And you're going to have like 3 people or 4 people or 5 people who are division managers reporting to you, not the people on the ground, not the warehouse guys, not the guys that do the product. And so you become more strategic and less practical, you know?
mm. You're in the clouds and not the
I was
dirt,
just, it
right?
was an
Is what
interesting,
you ever
it's
say.
an interesting lens. Yeah, it was an interesting outlook. And I still have to think about it because I don't know if that's the right answer. Because I do like the product. Like, to me, tinkering and building the product itself and kind of building the marketing into it is very important. Like, yeah, I get it. At some point, I'm going to be the CEO, but like, I don't think if
Mm,
Steve Jobs didn't like what he was doing, maybe if he wasn't a computer guy or a technology guy, maybe he'd be the wrong person for the job. It's very difficult to be,
mm,
an advocate from the heart where people start believing you and believing the hype if you don't love the product.
yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you can manage with the brain, you can manage with the brain, or you can manage with the heart, and you need a little bit of both, because you do need to establish the KPIs, and you need to figure out the numbers, and you got to like look at the data. So like all those things matter, but also the unmeasurable side matters. It's like, the employees and the culture and the purpose and the values and like all those things you talked about. None of those things are measurable, but they're just as important.
Yeah. That's interesting. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was trying to decide if I agree too or not. I definitely love the building aspect. I like the shiny object. I think to me it may be, I don't know if this is a deeper level, but to me I like the hey, can I do this? Hey, can I really pull this off? Like, hey, can I really build this? Can I buy this
I
business
think you
and make it
can.
better? Can
I
I?
think the
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is like, if you're the type of person that's already thinking in that direction, the answer is probably yes. It's
Mm,
like you can probably take anything and you can build something out of it, in my
mm,
opinion. Like, I can probably start another similar product business where packaging is interchanged with something else. Because again,
yeah.
this packaging thing that I was doing isn't the first thing I did. I did something else prior to that. Everything was identical, like the PPC leads, the sales process, the types of customers, business to business, the growth of the company, the divisions, the handing off your job roles as you grow, kind of being the person that's the janitor and sort of the owner. It's like all those
Yeah.
things were identical, but the product was different. And so, can I take another product and build something else out of it that's just as similar? I probably could, and I can probably do it faster than I did last time because I have all that knowledge to fall back on. Do I want to do it is the question. And so I think it comes back to the purpose,
Yeah.
because at a certain point, like, let's say your business is growing and it's not packaging, it's, I don't know, screws or something, cameras or something else. Like, will I find myself staring at a computer screen, 2 months later and hating my job again? It's
Mm,
possible, right? And I'm trying
yeah.
not to do that before I start all those things and bring all these people who want to believe in it and I don't, you
Mm.
know?
That's true. Believing in the product is a big one. Yeah. Yeah. When you were talking at the end there, I immediately thought of the fire, the challenge, like the frustration aspect is a component, and I want your thoughts on this. How big of a component is that to the joyfulness of the parts that you enjoy? You know what I'm saying? So some of the frustrations, struggling, hey, staring at a computer screen, those things aren't your favorite, but do those have to happen to a certain extent in order for you to suck the joy out of the things that you do like?
Yeah, I think to some degree they do suck the joy out of it, but you have to like it. And
Mm,
you have to have almost a stress tolerance to these things. And then you have to maybe have a hobby outside of it, like jiu-jitsu. And so, you
right.
go train during lunch and then you come back all refreshed.
Hmm.
Because if all your eggs are in this basket and all you're doing is like burning yourself out working 24/7, it's like, how long can you sustain that before you say fuck it?
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
curious, and then I want to go back to the delegation, but I was curious about work ethic for you. Like, when you are either wanting to partner someone or one of the aspects of it that you respect about another individual, like how big is work ethic and that type of drive of like, hey man, I will do it or die. How big is that now, and how important is that to either partnership or building something?
Yeah. So for me personally, by nature, and again, this is the genetic lottery, I'm high in
Mm,
conscientiousness. Like, if given the choice, all I would do is work. And so kind of my wife balances me out because she tells me like, look, man, you're gonna burn yourself. Like, let's go on vacation. Because if she doesn't do that, I'll work 24/7 and 7 days a week. Um,
yeah.
and at some point, I'll just sit there and I'm like, oh man, my brain isn't working anymore.
Oh, I
Um,
hate vacations.
as far as Yeah, I don't like vacations either because it
I
kind
don't
of
like
takes you
vacations.
away.
Yeah.
It takes you a certain amount of time to get back into the game. So it's much easier when you already have inertia and momentum, right?
Mm.
Yeah. On the other hand, it's a curse because again, inertia and momentum will only carry you so far before your body basically starts giving up. So it's like it's a nice balance. As far as partnerships go, I used to always think that competence was the number one value. You have a list of all these values that you kind of establish and think in terms of. And
Yeah.
I've always put competence as number one. But
Mm.
I think integrity is more important. I would say competence is more of it's kind of like quality, right? Quality is a given because if there's no quality, nothing else really matters in terms of product. Like if the shit is like if the iPhone wasn't perfect, you
Right.
wouldn't even
Right.
consider it. Like none of the other things matter. None of the features matter. Same thing
Right.
here. Competence is kind of like one of those two. It's like if you're not competent or if you don't have that work ethic, you know.
Yeah.
However, I think integrity is more important because if you don't have integrity, competence kind of falls away. It's like which one can you take away and for it to still work? I think if
That's a
you have competence, if you have integrity but no competence, you can still figure it out because you can teach people pretty much
right.
anything if they're willing to be interested. However, if they're super competent but low integrity, it's like you better watch your back, bro.
Same thing when you're hiring people, right? You hire for personality, and usually when as owners, we hire for personality, which really is an extension of, hey, what's your integrity like? What's your values like? What's your work ethic like? To me, when I say personality, those things are kind of usually a given, at least for me when I think about it, at least in the hiring context. Um, and yeah, the same for me. I think integrity is right there. I also think for me, when it comes to partners, have you been through the fire? I was telling this to my buddy Michael that we're mutual friends of. I was like, if I'm going to be in a partnership, which is like a marriage, like I want to know you've been through the fire. I don't want to know you've had a cushy life. I don't want to know that you had the great, you knew who to contact and you had the golden handcuffs. You knew the emails. You had those contacts, right? I want to know you've been through some shit because I will not respect you, even if you're high integrity, high competence. I will not respect you over the long term if you have not been through the fucking some type of fire, right? Whether you had to get
Yeah.
out of a tough spot in a foreign country or you went to war and battle, like you have had to have some massive period in your life, I don't care how long it was, where you yourself struggled like hardcore. And because I think through that, and one of the reasons I looked for that, or I hope to figure that out under a dinner or a couple of dinners or through conversations or just knowing them a while. And I know you have been. And so one of the reasons I look for that is because when you actually go through some shit and some fire, you learn about who you are. You learn that integrity does matter. You learn that work ethic. You learn to look in the mirror, right? Or, you look if you're doing shadow work, like you get a hard look at who you are, especially if you've been through some shit and you've seen some success. That means you suffered immensely. You suffered immensely and you figured out yourself and your life, your personal life mostly, usually, to be able to be successful in business. Because I think a lot more people can be successful in their business, their idea, side hustle, if they figure this out and they figure themselves out. And so that's one of the things I look for in a partner. Would you agree?
I would agree. I think comfort doesn't create strength. There's no
Mm,
there's no strength in comfort in my opinion because if you've kind of been cushy and sort of sliding through life with sheer luck or a trust fund backing or things like that, it's very
yeah,
difficult to be a strong, good person. Maybe you're just a nice person, but you're weak. And
right.
I think people are tested it through conflict and through situations like you described because that's where you see the real nature of people. Um,
Yeah,
it's like whenever we were hiring, none of those bad records, again within reason,
right.
really deterred me from hiring good people. I remember when we hired our sales manager. Um, he was going through some shit, and we hired him, and a week later, he basically went to jail for like a week.
Woo.
But then he came out, and he was with us to this day, and he was excellent.
Wow,
You know,
wow,
but none of these things are
wow.
really like a problem in my opinion because I think they're part of character and I think you can gauge these things. Again, I try to think that maybe I'm it's not very humble, but I tend to be a good reader of people. Maybe it's
Mm.
wrong. Maybe if you look at like my hiring statistics, they're probably 50-50 at best. Because we've hired and fired plenty of people who didn't really work out. I just tend to look at the other 50 that I'm like, oh shit, I did a great job getting him in. So it's also possible that I'm just like not cognizant of my failures.
Of the
But yeah,
two, I would rather remember the successes.
oh, absolutely. But I think
Yeah,
again, stains on your record shouldn't be deterrents
yeah,
of hiring, relationships. Like a lot of the friends I grew up with basically all have stains on their records, and they're fine people.
yeah. Yeah, and I think you can find a lot of that out just by how they operate, how they present themselves, how they speak about themselves, the language they use. 70-80% of communications is verbal. So really how they show up in their life. If they have a family, how do they show up for their family? Like I think those things, especially for men, shows a great deal, a great, great deal. And again, this is
Yeah,
the context of like partnerships, or hiring, I guess. But
yeah, I would
handling your
agree.
personal
I would agree.
yeah, handling your personal
Yeah,
life is
just
so important.
pay attention. Hire slow, fire fast.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's the term, I think.
So I want to get back to the delegation because I think this is really interesting because that was the one of the things that you said that helped you guys kind of grow. What type of person do you feel like you had to become in order to be a good delegator, right? Because you had to create SOPs, right? Standard operating procedures, you know, uh, a slew of things to be able to train people, especially with the fear of like maybe I'm not a good boss, a good leader. I'm delegating this to this person, whether it's a new hire or I'm taking one person, I'm transferring them to a new position, they have new duties. I'm hoping this works, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
hoping the book traction, they're in the right seat. But all those things require you to
Mm-hmm.
be a great communicator, a high level understanding of people, of your business, of course,
Mm-hmm.
leadership, like all of
Mm-hmm.
those things. Like how can you talk to me about because you were in a bigger business than I was, like maybe the failures or like the things that you had to like. How did you level up through that process? Did you just trial by fire?
Yeah, pretty much trial and error.
Yeah,
Yeah, ultimately, what you're doing is like EOS says, you mentioned it, right people and right seats, because you can have
right.
right people in the wrong seats, and that's not good. Although it's better than wrong people in the right seats. Um,
That's true.
and it's all people, man. It's figuring out what core competency is of the person you're bringing in and putting in that role, what that role requires. You really have to have a good understanding of the role. But as you're growing and you're doing the role yourself, I like doing all the roles myself initially, just to
Hmm.
understand what they require, because sometimes from a high level it's very difficult to see the exact um, responsibilities and the intricacies of a specific role until you actually start doing it yourself. Because
Yes.
you think how something's supposed to function, but you're probably wrong about it. You're better off going deep inside, rolling up your sleeves, and driving the forklift in the warehouse and figuring out why it's taking them 3 hours to unload the truck where you think it should be taking them only an hour. It's like, why don't you fucking go
Hmm.
do it and see how that works out for you, and see if you can
Hmm.
do it in an hour. And it's like
Hmm.
you doing it for your own company, and I bet you can do it in an hour. Maybe it does take certain things of adjustments of expectations, and then from that point you kind of start figuring out, well, what type of person is this? Like, is this somebody who can make decisions, or is this somebody who requires process and systems? Like, I'm all about process and systems in a company. I like that. I just don't like forcing people to run by those. Like, I'll put them
Hmm.
together, and I'll train people
Hmm.
to them, but everything is objective based. It's like, here's what we're trying to achieve, here's best practices how to get there from my perspective, and my perspective is valid. However, if you feel that there's another way to do it, you're welcome to do it, and then we
Right.
kind of watch and see what happens. And so if you're doing it and you're not following the procedures and you're failing at them, we should probably have a conversation.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But
And
that's
and having
basically
those.
the delegation method.
Yeah, I love that because also from a leadership standpoint too, having that SOP and having knowing that they were trained on it is a unit of measure where you can base something off of. It's hey, when I did this or my partner when we created this SOP, it took this long, it was done in this way, this was the end result, and this is the quality. That's a unit of measure that we can now reflect the person's performance off of, right? For good or for
Yeah.
worse, right? Okay,
Yeah, for
I
sure.
like that.
And it depends on the role. Like you should
Yeah,
definitely write procedures, because writing those things down will actually help you figure out how many steps are there really in that procedure, because sometimes you don't understand. You think something like, unloading a truck will take an hour, but then you start writing those procedures down, and it's like an 8-page document. You know,
yeah,
check the forklift whether it's been charged, uh make sure everything's been palletized properly, make sure there are proper labels on the thing, and then like kind of go right.
yeah,
um
yeah.
other things like sales, for example. I don't know if they require procedures per se, they require a process. So you
Yes,
have to understand that this is the way your customers buy your products, and this is the way that uh, you're able to trap a higher closure rate. And so then you start scripting that out. You have discovery, then you have a value proposition, and then you have a follow-up, and then you have follow-up number 2, and then you have closure, and then you have invoicing, and then you have project management introduction. And then so you start scripting that out and basically start building that into your CRM or whatever software you're using. Even if it's
right.
Excel, like it helps for your salespeople to understand best practices on how to close a specific
Yeah,
prospect. And then you start looking at the salespeople, and especially if you have a team, not everybody's going to do it the same way. Not everybody's going to be good at it. Maybe some
right.
people do discovery very well, but then they have a problem with the value proposition. Maybe some people are weak in discovery. And then so different salespeople and different people in the organization will require different levels of training. And that's where all those
Mm,
KPIs comes in. So you're like,
right,
why'd you lose the sale? How many times did you call them? What
right,
times of the day did you call them? What did you tell them?
right.
Maybe you talked them out of a sale because you yourself aren't sure, and then so you got to
Right.
start training on all of these little things. And that's where the
Yeah.
UX comes in ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that UX framework that you talked about with the other guest. Yeah, interesting.
Going
Huh.
back to marketing, so
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
as you kind of start build yeah so as you kind of start building cohorts and starting to put out content, how do you, from a human to human perspective, like how do you draw the line of being an expert without sounding like an asshole? Because
Yeah.
I see a lot of I see a lot of content out there from subject experts, especially in this kind of like manly man space.
Hmm.
And a lot of them sound like people I don't want to do business with, even though they sound competent. It's like, how do you make sure you don't become that? Because as you start becoming more competent in a certain field, you start kind of boxing yourself in as a know-it-all. And again, if you're the smartest
Yeah.
person in the room, like who the fuck wants to be in that room?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think, it's a couple of different answers. I think if it's, you're the COO and you're good on camera and you're the main guy that started creating that content, and it was probably really good and more authentic in the beginning because you weren't as polished, right? Even if you had a level of competency, you got better as your company grew, right? And so the content was accurate and it was right, but it wasn't assholish because it was more authentic. It was more
Mm-hmm.
real. When you're so polished, when you're at that high level, maybe you should stop creating the content. I think that's a
Mm.
delegation thing. I really do think that. So if the way, going back to what we stated as true and we both agreed on, which is, authentic tribe, making sure you're relatable, you're passionate, you care, and that comes across on either in the written word, in the image, or in the video. If you're too polished, like one, hopefully you have someone in your life or in your business is, hey, yo, man, you come across as an asshole, a know-it-all. That doesn't look good, and you're trying too hard, right? And someone needs to tell that person, and then they go, oh, wow, I need to delegate. I need to take my competency to maybe a different medium. And I see some of these guys make the podcasting move, which I think is great because I think then you can have that dialogue back and forth, and it's not a short 90-second, 3 minute, 5 minute video. where you're trying to prove that you're a person worthy of trusting, right? I also think depends on the type of content. So if you're depends on what you're talking about. If it requires like app development, UX, right? You want to depends on what your the content is, of course, but you want to prove that you have a high level of competence because it's a very detailed type thing, right? Like you want to know people will go, oh, okay, like that they actually understand it because they say that a specific industry word. So, you need to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that you can say those industry words that triggers like, oh, wow, they're an expert. So it does depend on the type of content that you're creating because you can create many different forms. It just makes sure that you know your audience, and meaning if you're going to talk to business owners that are doing 10 million and above, the language and way you present the content needs to be for that audience. So someone
Mm-hmm.
Yahoo that is $2 million a year comes across it, they're like, oh wow, like this seems maybe he's too asshole-ish. Maybe it's, he's a know-it-all. Yeah, but the guys that are doing 10 million plus a year, he's speaking my language. He's saying these words, these industry
Mm.
words that make sense, right? So you need to have a good barometer of that of the audience and what that content's for. And the problem is, and maybe people don't understand this, is they are just going overboard with proving that they're the expert, and they're doing it on the 90-second clips, the 15-second clips. They're doing it in the 3 minute, 5 minute, YouTube clips. Like and that's where it feels like they're trying to be a know-it-all, and that they're appealing to the wrong audience, right? Does that make sense?
It does. It's feeling like they are so trying to prove themselves that I almost don't want to deal with
Right,
them. It
right.
feels like a pyramid scheme to make it a full circle.
That, yeah, man, that's God, multi-level marketing, man. I mean, it had such good intent in the beginning. I think it started in the 60s or
Did
70s.
it?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the main one that was big. It's still big to this day. If someone said it, I would know
Amway.
it. Amway is one of them. Yeah, yes, yeah. It started with Amway, and people are like,
Yeah,
"Oh wow!" Like,
Amway. There was
well, and
what's the other one? The one that does the drinks. The
yes,
Herbalife.
uh, Jim Rohn, I mentioned, right? One of my mentors from afar, so to speak. He was a part of that, and he preached that. Now, and I told you when I said MLM, I could have an argument for both ways for it's good and bad. The good argument is
Hmm.
one, it can introduce you to digital marketing, personal development, all these things. I mean, that's one of the big things they push. But two, you can make an argument that it'll have a comeback. Maybe it'll be a different form. Hopefully, they won't call it MLM, but because now it's more tribal, it's more authentic. You're building your own unique personal brand. Branding's coming back. Personal branding's going to be a bigger thing as we grow. That's why podcasting is getting so huge, right? For people that are staying consistent, they
Hmm.
do it. It works out really well for them. But multi-level marketing company was like, hey, this is your own business, but you're the business. People are going to buy your product,
Hmm.
which you're going to get a downward residual from because they buy and they love you. Well, multi-level marketing company, that's when in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there was no digital online. Sleazy salesman. There was no term that was called sleazy salesman. It was just a car salesman, right? Like, so people trusted people more, right? There was that natural, down the street neighbor, I'll discipline your kid, and I trust that Jim down the street because we have beers on Sunday, we watch a football game, he can discipline my kid, right? There was just this implicit trust as a culture that we get way far away from, right? We got too polarized because we had these levers that these people in power can pull now. One of them was the internet. Obviously, the big one was the internet. And so we got so
Yep.
polarized. And so now, it's a digital culture, but now we're going in reverse. So multi-level marketing company could be a good thing now, right? Because that's kind of what you're doing anyways when you're selling a service or product, when you're doing personal branding. I mean, that's what you are. You build a brand that people love, and even if it's just 1,000 devoted people and it's no more than that, they'll buy anything that you say buy. Well, that's what a multi-level marketing company is. I mean, and it just has a bad
Yeah.
rap. So that's my argument for it being a good thing.
Yeah. It's almost like franchising on a personal level, right? Because you're still
Right.
franchising the brand. You're just
Yes.
kind of building your own thing. I heard a joke that they found a way to sell more snake oil by replacing the word snake with essential.
Marketers ruin everything.
Speaking
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, speaking of multi-level marketing. But yeah, I mean,
That's
I
funny.
guess it works because again, back in the '60s, you had like Tupperware and Avon and all those things that
Yeah.
they were kind of and Cutco and Primerica. There's like a whole bunch of them that basically started. But then as competition ramped up, I think the practices became more predatory. And so I think
Yes.
that gave the marketing the bad name. It's not the business system per se. It's the competition forced people to become less integrous, have less
Yes.
integrity. And so therefore that basically started becoming a problem. Like ultimately the system was meant to fail because like how else are you going to sell these knives that you have to buy $200 worth of kit of if
Yeah.
everybody's doing it around you, like,
Right. Yeah. Do you, here's a question to you. What do you think is one of the most marketed and sold books in the world? The whole entire world?
I'd say the Bible.
The Bible. So, my point to this is religion is one of the best marketers, advertisers in the world ever, right? You could
Yeah, but I
say.
don't know if it's multi-level. Is it
Well, that's
multi-level
true.
or is it just marketing?
Yeah. Well, that's true. I mean, maybe. I mean, people go for the preacher, the pastor, right? I mean, if they're good, they have great sermons and great music, and the place is not sleazy. Like people get loyal and committed, and they give money every week. I mean, you can kind of make it a multi-level marketing from that standpoint, I guess. But they're it's one of the most marketed. Or what I was going to say is I think people learned uh, psychology from the things that work so well. So Christianity or the Bible, or any faith
Hmm.
is one of the best marketed. Well, a smart person at some point, right, or a very aware, astute person at some point goes, man, why are these religions so popular? What are they doing? What are they saying? Who are they appealing to? I think that someone goes, oh, and someone had a bright idea. Oh, they're doing this, they're saying this, they're appealing to the person's pain points and what they care about, and something that they deeply value, and they'll stand on the line and they'll fight anyone in the world for, right? And they learn these tactics to sell, for better or for worse, what they thought was good for the world, right? Business, product, services.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
and I think that once they go, oh, wow, this is working, well, power corrupts, right? Absolutely. And so I think, and I think it always
Absolutely.
will to a certain degree. And down the road, I think AI will eradicate that because we'll start living longer and longer. We can get to that conversation if you want, but I think people learn that, and then over the evolution of that, people learned the tricks and tactics to control their mind and their heart. And marketing, I mean, marketing and sales go hand in hand. And so if you know the words, the power words, the tactics to appeal to people, to make them take that stand and buy and be a forever loyal of this product, this food, this whatever service that you're doing. I think that just got twisted, and I think marketing got such a terrible name for that, or at least was attached to it, it had an association to it, because people don't want to be marketed to, right? The sleazy salesman, thing, like people don't want to be, and I still think they're sleazy salesmen, by the way. We just bought a car not too long ago, and I had two horrible experiences with two different dealerships. One was worse than the other, which I didn't
Hmm.
think was possible. Um, and so again, I think you have people understand the levers now a lot more. And so now you have to just make sure you're a person of integrity to not pull those levers, or if you know how to pull them, make sure it's with, a good honest heart, good integrity, good, and you have a good product that maybe you can even openly say, hey, it's not maybe the best that I feel like it could be, but man, I'm doing my best, and people will still buy it. I think people will still, because they love what you're doing. And I think, going back to one of the original chats we had, people do business with people, and
Yeah.
as as long as you don't corrupt yourself by learning these tools, this, knowledge is power. I think I went off the rails with this question, but I think uh, I think marketing can be still a true and really good thing for any business.
Yeah, I would agree. I think marketing gets thrown around as a negative term sometimes, but they're really
Yeah,
just referring to marketing tactics rather than marketing strategy because
yeah,
as I said, marketing takes many different forms and people think of marketing as advertising or they think of it as sleazy salespeople trying to sell you something you don't need.
right,
But really, if you're thinking of customer lifetime value, and I think most businesses are, then you ultimately have the problem solving itself, because you want the people to come back to you for the next purchase, and so you have to bring integrity into the equation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you have to show it on your in your content, so the word, image, and video, um, and that'll bring your tribe to you. Bring your tribe to you.
Yeah. Is AI going to change that? You mentioned AI. How do you think this whole influencer and content creation and TikTok product experts are going to get influenced or impacted by AI in the future of it, in your opinion?
Yeah, in
Obviously,
my
none of us
opinion,
know, but I think we can
yes.
all guess.
Yeah. So I'll preface my response with like, no one will know, and this thing is going faster than any of us knows. I try to be on the quote unquote cutting edge. I try to do my darndest to try to, at least for what I need, stay in the know. And it's hard. Even the guys that I rely on to give me the headlines, the 3 minute YouTube headline videos of all the different changes, possibilities, aspects, automations, whatever it is that's involved with multi-level market or MLMs or LLMs, large language models. Um, so it's going
Freudian
really, really
slip.
quick, right? Yeah, Freudian slip, right? So it's going fast, super, super fast. And so first, it'll be people that know how to wield the tool. And that'll be for a good while. I think the companies that know how to wield the appropriate tool, meaning AI tool, AI software, what have you, and then the individual that knows how to use it in their everyday life. And it's going to get simpler. I think I want to say the end of this year, if not definitely the first quarter of next year. Agents, AI agents, which is to simplify it, agents. It's the ability to tell the AI, ChatGPT, hey, go research this, create a paper on this, and create a video for that. And you don't need any other prompt. And and it'll just go and do it, right? And so it's an agent, right? Easy way maybe to think about it is Agent Smith, right? So it's just an agent that works for you, and you can just have it do all of these things
Hmm.
and actually work on and in your desktop, your Google Drive. It'll have access to that. Yeah, you'll grant it access to probably everything. And so agents will be a really huge thing, but you need to know how to wield them, right? You need to know how to integrate AI and the capabilities, even if it's just ChatGPT, and just using it
Hmm.
day to day to make yourself better, smarter, more efficient. You come across a certain way. I mean, it is getting super, super important in order to be able to use this. And the big thing that I usually get hit back, well, it has all of these errors. Well, that's getting slowly less and less of an issue. And at some point, very soon, it won't be an issue at all. It'll give you exact real facts. It'll give you, I mean, depending on the prompt, right? It'll do that. And
Hmm.
so that's the big AI companies, OpenAI and Google, they're trying to work on making sure that it is more factual and it has less and less errors or echoes that they call it. And so how does this play out, right? Well, if you know how to use AI, you have much stronger job security. You have a much easier time not having a lower payroll, because if you know how to create an SOP, you can teach these agents and using these AI to literally fill a lot of these roles, and
Hmm.
do up to an 80% job that you can. And so we're coming upon an age because of AI and these tools of the generalist. And so your ability, and that's why entrepreneurship is just going to become more and more important, because you're able to balance your own self, your values. You're able to operate at a high level. All of these things that entrepreneurship represents. But a generalist it used to be you need to be the scalpel, and that's not true anymore, because now you're going to have AI, and you'll have a personal AI that'll know everything about you, including your health history,
Hmm.
including your family history, including everything that you want to feed it, everything that maybe someone else created. They created a great PDF. Hey, learn everything about this PDF, and now apply it to whatever strategy. So the information is just going to be so personalized to you and your business, but you got to know how to use it. And so where is this going? For marketing for businesses, um, I think it's going to be. I think there's going to be a lot of one-hit wonders, and then I think there's going to be a lot of acquisition. I think the companies,
Hmm.
because in my experience, and knowing at least small business owners at a deep, deep level, I feel very competent and confident to say I understand small business owner at a deep level, you know, they're just so much still in their hole, um, that they're going to get swallowed up. You know, so a business owner, chucking the truck, as we say in the home services, chucking a truck, 20-year-old kid just got out of, his 8-week class that knows how to fix HVAC systems, but he knows how to
Hmm.
use AI. He knows how to
Hmm.
self-improve either through AI or through whatever means. Like he knows those are the things, but he knows how to use AI. Well, there's your copywriter, there's your marketer, there's your, teach you how to be better at sales. I mean, all of these things, he knows how to use it. And so he knows how to get Google reviews because Google will say, hey, Google reviews matters in this way, right? Because he trusts this tool. And that's the big thing, especially some of the older gentlemen and ladies. They don't trust these new, these new technologies. Well, you just can't put your head in the sand anymore. Like you have to be able to trust these things. And so chucking the
Yeah.
truck, young kid just starting up is going to be able to overshadow you. How is he getting all these reviews? How is he, getting all this business? What, he just started last year and he has 3 trucks on the road. Like, how is he doing $2 million? Like that stuff will happen faster and faster and
Hmm.
faster because the go to market speed, is just going to be a lot easier, for the people that understand AI and
Hmm.
able to use it, day to day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think some of these older owners barely understand the old technology, and now this you have this AI new technology coming in, and some of them don't even have a website, and that's considered
Oh,
old
I was just
technology.
thinking that.
So yeah, it's gonna be rough because that kind of parlays in the question is what's the exit strategy outlook, because as a people coming into entrepreneurship and starting their own businesses, obviously, I think obviously, but obviously to me at least, is they're looking for freedom of time and the potential um, level of fuck you money to some degree, or
Yeah.
whatever that means to people. I guess there's a different level of fuck you money to different fuck you people, and so the question is, what's sort of the trajectory of entrepreneur, and when is enough enough? And a lot of them kind of come into entrepreneurship and they find out it's just another job, except for they're the boss, except for somebody instead of somebody else being the
Right.
boss. But
Right.
really, they just end up with another job, especially people in the service industry, the ones that actually run the trucks and go and fix. And it's like time
Yeah.
equals pay. And so, is that really a business, or is that just a job that you wouldn't have otherwise, that you created for yourself? And so, to me, I always looked at those things as kind of I don't know if it's something I even want to get into, because I want to not trade my time for money, because time is a more valuable asset. And
Yes.
so as these new technologies start coming in, and as even the new kid that knows AI runs 3 trucks, what's the trajectory for somebody like that in that sort of business?
Yeah. And it's funny. The home service is, those type of business owners have such a very, very similar mindset, set of values, beliefs as the martial art industry. And I think they're
Mm,
they're kind of dinosaurs, when it comes to moving on to new technology. And so for me, at least for me, it was a very, surprising, because what the hell I know about HVAC, right? 2.5 years ago, like what, I didn't know too much more. I was, as much as the average guy. Now I know a lot more, obviously, specifically from the business side of things. But it was a very smooth transition because they had very similar blocks in technology, blocks in wearing so many hats, blocks in prioritization, all of those things that small business owners have. It was very, very similar. And so you know, if you, man, I'm trying to, like, whoever might be listening to
yeah,
this,
no,
that
it, it's it's
that
it's
is
a it's a
this.
hard- it's a hard question,
Yeah.
because as I
Yeah.
think about these things, you kind of have the same thing happening in all industries. You have people who are like truly entrepreneurs, who are out there creating companies that run themselves, that they then sell,
Yeah.
or do something else with. Maybe they cash out in some other way. And then you have people who are creating companies that they think they're entrepreneurs, but they're really just employees
Right.
working for themselves. And
Right.
so it's kind of like even taking jiu-jitsu. There are people who created Alliance, for example, who are like the guys at the top who franchise the gyms. Those are the entrepreneurs. And then you have the guys who are, kind of gym owners. and maybe
Right.
they have one or two gyms that they themselves run, but they can't step away, you know.
Right.
And so the service industry, I imagine, is very similar. So you guys have that, or
Right.
you have guys that create software and systems, and they sit, in an office and they run the operations. And then you have guys in the trucks who basically have one or two crews, and
Right.
they're part of one of the crews. And so it's like, are they truly an entrepreneur or not? And then what's the trajectory looking like to them? Because that type of business is very difficult to sell or exit from, especially if the reputation of the business is tied to the reputation of the owner. You know.
Yeah, and a lot of PE firms are having that issue when they buy up these small mom and pops, right? They try to either keep the same mom and pop name, and because it's well known in that local market, but it's hard, especially if the owner leaves. Like maybe he stays on for 90 days, 180 days, maybe that's part of his exit plan to sell his business.
Hmm.
But he's the main guy, he's the main expert. He was the guy that, and also the crews go with him, right? So it's definitely a big problem in PE. My partner in my agency, he runs a private equity company, and he says the same thing. And so, the they have to decide. There's an argument of like, well, creating a job for myself, right? I have two triggers. I bring home $80,000 a year, $100,000 a year. Like that's great. That's better than what I was going to be, right? Maybe creating a job for myself is great, right? I wouldn't necessarily call yourself an entrepreneur. I would call yourself a business owner, right? Not to use Michael Gerber's words, but the E Myth. You have to
Hmm.
transition through those
Hmm.
phases. You started it because you're so good at your thing, right? Martial arts is an easy one. Home service is another easy one. You're so good at installing HVACs or plumbing, whatever that is. You're like, hey, I'll open up a business, but you're really opening up a job for yourself. And then the rub is all of the soft skills and all of the personal development and all the stuff that we've been talking about over the last hour and a half of looking yourself in the mirror, and you need to grow, and need to have a mentor, in my opinion, that has done it before, that you trust, that can kind of show you the ropes and save you decades of time sometimes. But you need to, you know, know which one you're in. And you mentioned about some of these businesses are not sellable, and so I'm getting into the acquisition space, and so I really want to start buying up small businesses, and and for that reason, because I think Gen X, the baby boomers, all of these are retiring, and a lot of these guys own HVAC companies. Some of them own martial arts schools, but martial arts schools are barely sellable. HVAC or home services, they
Hmm.
can be sellable, right? So, and I just not too recently finished the course, and so I'm really kind of hot and heavy on this acquisition stuff. And so, one of the things that there's a bunch of things to make your business sellable, but a couple of main points, if you want to, and this you can tell me this is true or not because you just sold your business, is you got to have a succession plan. You got to know, hey, do you still have a text there? You still got to actually go out there and service. So you got to make sure that that's in place. And then you got to make sure your operations and your sales process are ironed out. You got to be able to show in your numbers and your financials, like, hey, this is the input, this is the output, right? And this is the training, this is the SPU. So you got to make sure that it can run without the owner is a big one. It makes it much more sellable. Um, and Financials, your books, right, obviously is super important. Make sure that it's as clean as possible. Obviously, no books are perfect, but make sure that everything is tracked, everything is traceable, and you
Hmm.
know and then you got to have a realistic expectation of what it's sellable, right? Because especially, and I've been on some calls and I'm seeing, sometimes these mom and pop, husband and wife teams, they've been doing this 30 years. They just realized they should probably sell it because they, can't do it anymore. Or they lost interest in it, and they're like, okay, I'm ready to sell it. And they're just crying on these phone calls with, some of these consultants
Hmm.
because their business isn't sellable, or they thought they were, a $2 million, HVAC company, and they can sell it for 4x EBITDA, and maybe it's 1.5x, right? So they worked
Nope.
30 years, yeah, 30 years thinking they could get this, 5, 6, 10x multiple, and then, laugh all the way to the bank and be on a beach somewhere. And they kind of have that vision, and it's not sellable at all. Or if anything, it's not, you're not getting the multiple. And that is a massive crush for someone that blood, sweat, and tears, small business owner, to build that business.
Yeah, there's a lot of dilemmas in that, both ethical, financial, and otherwise. Because for somebody like that who's basically been building that business and operating it, to them it's their baby, and that's valuable.
Yeah.
But to somebody who's a buyer, they're literally just looking at the KPIs and the numbers and
Right.
repeatability and customer lifetime value. It's like, they're ultimately looking at the teeth and not the horse. And to them, they're
Right.
like the family member and not the teeth. So it's like there's a mismatch between the people buying and the people selling a lot of times. um,
Right.
the other ethical dilemma there is, if you're building the type of business that's going to be sellable someday, you ultimately have to run it like a business and not like a day job.
Job.
And then so you have
Yeah.
to start delegating, and then you have to start creating systems and processes and operational procedures that ensure that the business can function without you as the owner, because that's
Right.
basically what the value is to the buyer. Now,
Right.
if you go down that path, at a certain point, it loses all the magic, because the human factor is, especially for somebody like me who likes tinkering with the product and the R&D and, talking to the customers and creating relationships, it stops becoming fun and interesting. It starts becoming like another financial thing. And it's like,
Right.
once it's that, then I'm staring at a monitor and I'm hating my job. Like, what the fuck's the point?
Yeah.
And sort of that's the gift, and that's the gift and the curse, and that's very hard to do. And especially if you get to a point where you've kind of systematized the processes and the business is operating more or less without you, um, you still have to keep the company culture going, because people have to
Yes.
believe something, and it's very difficult to make them believe in something if you don't believe it yourself. you know
Right.
and so it's like that's a hard thing to do. It's like I don't know if I've been able to crack that nut yet.
Yeah, the partners I have with our consulting, Secret Sauce Consulting, that's one of the things that and we're still trying to perfect the formula more or less, but that's why we call it Secret Sauce. We want to bring the secret sauce of to put it simply, that loving culture where we can instill such great customer service, such great product, such next level, like, feeling and experience, no matter what the business is. We want to bring that special sauce. And we know one of the aspects to this, and you probably know this too, is finding A players and giving them a piece of the pie. I think if you can really earnestly find really great players that want to be part of this bigger vision, so you can hopefully build their own long-term 5 year, maybe even 10 year goals, build that into your vision of the whole company.
Hmm.
Find these A players, show them the vision, make sure they believe in the vision, train them up, because we find an A player, like, you'll be able to really teach them this secret sauce, this formula, and then you can put them in lead the charge to be the operator, right? Because that's what you're saying. You got to keep the company culture alive, right? You're missing when you buy it, it's all numbers. You want to still make sure that there's a human factor. Well, I think you need to find these A players, give them the secret sauce, give them that mentorship, give them that brotherhood, give them that tribe feeling where they can call you at 2 a.m. if they have a big issue, personal or otherwise. Like, I think if you can build that tribe into the ability of acquiring different businesses, so you can sprinkle this secret sauce, find these A players, so you don't have to be the one that has to be the operations. That's the vision that at least we have initially. And we look for investors. We're trying to put these things together that people all believe the same thing, that you can actually build special culture that builds a beautiful experience, a beautiful product, a beautiful service, and you can find A players, give them a crazy salary, give them, quarterly, annual bonuses, whatever really motivates them. Make sure you build that into the plan, and you're going to attract great people. And I think there's, you and I have been in business a long time. We have this, I still do. I battle with this. Maybe you don't, but I still have this little thorn in my head that I have a hard time finding great people. Like, I feel like I want to find me, right? Or some version of me, maybe me 5 years ago. Like, that would be great. Where do I find those people? And I keep thinking that they're not there,
Hmm.
and which is totally not true. They're there. Maybe you have to poach them from someone else, someone else's company. That probably has to happen. But again, if you're coming from it from a good heart, good intention, high integrity, and you're able to communicate that vision, I think people will want to be attracted to that. And I think those A players will be there for you to have that special sauce. And for you, either build from scratch a great business or acquire. Like I said, I really want to go big on this acquiring. And to finish my point, I meant to say last a few minutes ago is baby boomers. all getting out. They're all old as crap, and they have these businesses. Like we mentioned, they're not sellable. They have no succession, or the kids are spoiled. They don't want any part of the business. Well, where are they going to put this business they started 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago? Well, give it to people, probably like you and I,
Hmm.
that could acquire it, add technology, add some secret sauce, make it feel amazing, great, add maybe a new product or something, but you get that entrepreneurial thrill. They get a nice paycheck, payday, and you have this business that doesn't have to just close, right? I think that's a shame. A business that, if you're a 10-year plus year business, I think there's something working, right, in your area. If you're 10 years or older, something's working. And so, usually you need updated, X, Y, Z. And so that's one of the things that we want to do. And I think that's something that a lot of people I think need to look at is start acquiring some of these small businesses. They're just going to be plentiful. There's a lot
Yeah,
of
no, I think
businesses
it's a good
in mind.
trajectory.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can make it work, absolutely great. There might be something there. Again, I don't know enough about it to tell you whether it'll succeed, but it sounds like a viable trajectory because absolutely people have customers they've acquired. There's cash flow happening.
Okay.
Maybe it's not
Yeah.
exactly what they thought it'd be from an exit
Mhm.
standpoint,
Right.
and maybe they're tired of running it. However, I think somebody who can accumulate a bunch of these and put the right people at the helm. Um,
Yeah.
you have to again the devil is in the pudding, as they say. You have
Right.
to you have to be the type of mentor or have to have a type of mentorship team that
Yes.
comes across as not money driven per se, but somebody that wants to build something. And then you have to build that integrity because you have to, again, integrity, competence is a given, but integrity, I think, is one of those things that you have to find. It's a hard thing to do, honestly, especially
Yeah.
if there's money involved.
How would you say you would build integrity in someone, or is it just something that's a own personal journey? Is there a way to build integrity?
No, I mean, some people have it automatically.
Yeah.
They have other downfalls. Usually it's a balance. I think you can build integrity through experience. You can build integrity through changes in perception of how things are. Ultimately, you have to get hurt enough if you're the type of person that doesn't have integrity automatically, and many don't. um, you have to get into enough situations where you start considering integrity as an integral value.
Mm,
Because if you want to play the long game and not the short game, I think integrity is the number one value that will get you there. It just depends on what kind of game you want to play. You're
mm.
after kind of short term. You're a short term flipper, or you're a long term builder. If you're a long term builder, you want to make sure that you're surrounded by people that will either help you get there or at least not get in the way. And the way to distinguish that is basically being open and forthcoming, and
Yeah.
steady on the things you need to be steady on, but ultimately humble enough. I don't like that word. It's been used
Yeah.
multiple times by
Yeah.
multiple people in my life, and I don't know if those people are humble enough themselves to use the word. However, that's come up. Usually, people that have integrity use the word humble, but again, I don't know if humble is the right word for it. Um, I don't know. It's a difficult thing to articulate, but I think it's one of those traits that will help you play the long game.
Yeah, I heard it early on. A real simple example of, how do you know if you have integrity? Do you wash your hands? No, you're in the bathroom.
Mm.
You're supposed to
When
wash your
people when, they,
hands.
when people are looking or not looking.
Not looking, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah, do you wash your hands when no one's looking, right? And it's a simple daily thing.
Right.
And that's something that to this day, I will freaking wash my hands. I will pick up that piece of trash. Like those
Mm.
little things, if you're like, hey, are you a person of integrity? And there's a lot of examples, but to me, that one I heard early on, because are you doing what's right when no one's looking? Like, are you, because doing what's right is always a good thing to have. And integrity goes a lot deeper than that. But I love that little example that always stuck with me.
Right for whom?
For great question. Yeah. So right for yourself because it's the right thing to do. And so you build up you build up the habit of making sure that you're doing the right thing. You're keeping those little kind of promises to yourself because you know it's the right thing to do. And I think that to me, that's one of the ways that you can build your own integrity is just, trusting yourself to do the right thing. And so if you, anytime a problem comes up, or a question is asked or whatever situation is, you build up that muscle because I think it's a muscle of doing the right thing, just because it's the right thing to do. And that'll shine bright, in my opinion, to everyone when you do that. Because integrity is a hard thing to me,
Yeah,
to consistently do because I think you can cheat, right? You can cheat yourself with integrity. I think you can, because there's,
you
how many
can,
people have
you
integrity
can,
in everything you do,
uh, yeah, and see, in from that context, it's are you just better at playing the game of integrity, or do you actually have integrity? And which one is more important? Because we can get into a philosophical discussion here. Because
right?
like you can be born with that trait, and you can be that from the start, and you're the type of person that wants to treat everybody equally and honestly and all of that. Or you can just not have it from birth. And then what do? You build it over time. And so do you actually build it, or do you just tie that value to playing a better long game? And is that integrity enough? You know what I'm saying? Because like I don't naturally have that trait. Like I admit that I don't have a default of integrity. It's like I pretty much always lived my life through the lens of competence, not integrity.
Mm,
And it's gotten me into a bunch of things that were not good. And so I'm like, I think integrity is a better value, and so it's learned. And so the question then becomes, is it a tactic to play a better long game because I ultimately want better outcomes, right? If you're after the
right,
objective, or you're either a process person or you're a result person. Like I'm a result person, I'm not a process person. Like and so that the lack of integrity ultimately paired with my desire for certain results at a certain point in my life got me in trouble
right,
multiple times, across a whole spectrum of decision making. And so at a certain point, then I looked at it and I was like, what kind of results do I want? I want this, and this, better
right,
relationships, um, you know, be perceived in this way,
right,
create this type of atmosphere around me. And so I started
right.
playing a better game. But you can still make a claim that I don't I integrity is ultimately just a better value that I started utilizing more to play a better personal outcome. And so, the philosophical question is, what the fuck? you know,
Yeah, it reminds me
like,
of a quick story. There was an American spy that went and spied for the Nazis. He became a Nazi, infiltrated the Nazis, and he was a public speaker. And then he got on the radio, and that's when his fame really took off. But he was a spy for the Americans, and
mhm,
he was preaching Hitler's all of his content, like all of his values and all the things that the Nazi Party believed. And there was this one guy that always was suspicious of this guy. He kind of didn't always quite trust him, right? And he was about to leave. And this one guy that was suspicious of the spy, um, he came up to him, and I think he was going to leave the country, and he was like, I don't think you're a Nazi, but he goes, but as I watched you over the years in preaching, and just totally influencing so many people, he goes, I ended up realizing it didn't matter. He goes, what you did for our
mm,
cause outshadowed even if you were a spy. And so it reminds me of that story because whether you play the game of integrity, the outcome's the same. Whether you do it and it feels good, and you're like, oh wow, like this makes me a better human and I'm getting all these great results and outputs. Awesome. Like maybe that'll start becoming me. or you're born with it, right? You're a farmer, or you're from another, I find foreign countries often have stronger values like that.
Hmm.
They're just bred in more work ethic and, not so carefree, fat American type stuff. And so, whether you pretend because like that's what people are looking for because you want these outcomes. My first mentor comes to mind. He pretended a lot. He played a good game. He probably still does to this day. It's one of the things that we kind of had a lot of friction on, which I kind of started to peel back layers of who he was, who he actually was. I didn't like that. I didn't like that, and so we separated, which sucks. But again, I always give him credit for him getting me in a big way, being a big mentor and getting me into the entrepreneurship game and validating a lot of things that
Hmm.
I thought that I were that maybe an entrepreneur. But you play the game, and so I don't think it matters. I mean, again, it can go philosophical, but um, it doesn't matter. I think if you learn it, you can practice it, and that's why I asked that question. He was like, is it something that can be learned? What can you say to a younger person, or maybe even raise a kid up? What can you do day to day to check yourself and to see if you are practicing integrity? Coming from a kids
Yeah.
programming, kids teaching background, we have these values that we try to teach every lesson, right? We focus on one value per week, and we go through these 52, values. Or no, we had 25, I think. We just cycled through those. And we had a little story about each value and what
Hmm.
it looks like and how they can do it, right, for the kids. Um, and that's what I think. And one of the things that I love Alex Hormozy goes hard on is he thinks everything is a skill, even the soft skills. He's very big on measuring and training, and coachable as long as the person has that right aptitude to be coachable and they want better
Hmm.
things for themselves, right? I think everything he said, everything can be a skill. The one that comes to mind is he talks about charisma. Hey, be more charismatic. Well, what does that look like? Well, it looks like a couple of different things to a couple of different people. There's varieties, but he goes, okay, this person's charismatic. What are they doing? Write that down. They're doing these things. They're presenting this way. They're pitching their voices. They're smiling. All of these different things. Go practice that, right? How do you get better at sales? How do you get better at understanding someone? How do you get better at listening? Like all those things that are kind of softer skills. He thinks that they're all skill sets that can be actually coached and teachable. Now, people have a massive advantage if they just, like you said, you're born with this high level of competency. Our mutual friend Michael has the same thing from Germany, just high level of competency, and just he just thinks things should be a certain way, which is a crazy high standard. He holds himself to that standard. He holds people in his circle to that standard as well, right? But that was just ingrained in him, right? And I definitely sense a lot of that from you,
Hmm.
just being from your background, who you are, your heritage, and even to a deeper extent, there's probably something literally genetic in your DNA that makes you a couple of different varieties, right?
Yeah, I
So,
think it's definitely more genetic than heritage. Heritage
mm,
more shapes your experiences, but
mm,
genetically, I think you're
true,
born with certain traits, and so they're kind of like animalistic instincts for the sake of a better, for lack of a better word. Um,
right,
but ultimately, like in in certain overstressed situations, you're always going to fall on those, right? So you're going to become kind of an animal to some degree. And
yeah,
so through discipline, you ultimately can learn all these values, like both integrity and competence and listening and curiosity and everything
right.
else. And so then the ethical dilemma here is like, who is a and I don't know if that's the wrong question. It's like, who's a better human being, the one that's kind of has integrity from the start, that's born into them and they're automatically that, or somebody who's through discipline
Yeah.
making themselves better in that specific trait, even though he doesn't possess it. And then can you then make a claim that the only reason they're actually applying that discipline and keeping that trait going is to achieve a better outcome? you know
Yeah, I don't know. My old business partner, where we built our successful online coaching and learning platform, she was born with it. She had these values that, like, I mean, her parents were really successful. She's an only child. So I think all that matters. Genetics, I'm sure. But man, it just made sense to her. Where me, I came from a different type of like viewing the world and framework, and I had to work harder at certain things and forcing myself to do things. And the discipline was a lot harder for me to build out the habit, right? for certain things. Other things, when it comes to like the heart and caring and consideration, like I saw things naturally. Oh no, this person actually really like means this, where she saw it differently, right? It was like, oh, they're after something. So we had this
Mm-hmm.
different prism based
Mm-hmm.
probably on our genetics and our upbringing. Um, and now she's a multimillionaire now. She blew up, so good for her. I'm still on my journey, but uh, I like the aspect, and again, this is just specific to me, going back to like, I like people that have gone through the fire. I give a lot of credit to people that have to work harder at things, to produce that output. Now, I mean, not to use Alex Hormozy too much, but he owns it. He goes, my genetics. I was born to a doctor father, only child. Like he win the genetic lottery, right? And the genetic or the upbringing, right? And his heritage, and he comes from Persia, and so. And there's lots of people out there like that they just it makes sense to them, a certain way of being, certain way of acting, and I think they're going to get the same result. But what I will say, again, in my own experience with my old partner, I don't know when it comes to, okay, maybe they have quicker success or the output is quicker because it makes sense. They don't have to work harder at it. But I don't know if the joy they get is any more. And I would even argue that it's
Mm.
less than the person that has to work for it. Because I think using my own example is making sure I was doing the things of integrity to become a man of integrity, and all of those things that you have to work at to get better. It feels better when I notice that I'm a man of integrity. When someone says to me, David, in 30, this is true quote, David, in 30 years of business, I've never had someone just sit and listen to me. And that same man gave me an
Mm.
opportunity that like saved my family. That's a whole other story. But like, I mean, it's just those little things, and it feels better knowing that I worked for it, right? And my family is of calling for me, so I'm gonna. Come on, go. Hey guys.
You got any books you want to recommend?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Ooh, this one. Yeah. So, and this is specific to the industry and the agency that I serve. So the E-Myth contractor. So if you heard of the E-Myth, they made a special version just for contractors. So if you're a contractor, home services, definitely a read, pertaining to some of the things that you and I talked about, Dave, taking yourself from the practitioner to the manager to the entrepreneur. This book really frames it up specifically to that
Mm-hmm.
industry. So that's the book I definitely highly recommend.
Awesome. I'll put that in the show
Well,
notes. And thank
thank
you
you,
for your
sir.
time, Dave.
Awesome. Thanks, bro.
See you around.
See ya.
Bye bye.